This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.
You're listening to the Oddball Aussie podcast with me, your host, Oz Oddball. During this episode, you may hear things that challenge your own beliefs, but please have an open mind and enjoy. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Aussie Oddball, and if you have any stories you want to share, send them to theoddballaussie@hotmail.com. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Yes, welcome back. First episode of the new year, and I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for being patient. It has been a little while. It's also the podcast birthday today. So this is the third year of the Oddball Aussie podcast, and it's great to see the numbers have been growing each year. So putting a lot more effort in this year. We're really going to try to go gangbusters with this year. A lot of new ideas, and as you just heard just then, frequent listeners will have heard that's a new intro, so I'll try to do a new intro every year. But yeah, I had a great little breakaway, fresh and ready to restart. So I hope you all had a great Christmas and a great New Year's. And, hope you've all, tried to stick to your New Year's resolutions. I know a lot of people have already probably failed at that, but that's okay. No judgment here, because I bet you I've probably flopped at about 10 that I've made every single time. So what are we talking about on the birthday episode, the first episode of 2022? We will be talking about ghosts and, well, in particular, ghost research equipment or ghost hunting equipment and all that ghost hunting stuff. So regardless of whether you believe in them or not, maybe you're someone who wants to go and check out some of these haunted tours, the haunted house tours and things like that are around. It's always good to know the gear. It's also always good to know what sort of equipment and what sort of price range you're sort of looking at, because it does vary. It very much does vary at what sort of price range and how far you want to get into the research, really, because you can spend a lot of money on paranormal research. So we'll dive into that. And also make sure you check out that network that I'm part of, the Straight Up Strange Productions. And check out that TeePublic store that I have. Lots of cool stuff that you can buy. I'm looking at maybe this year as well starting to sell NFTs. I recently just bought myself a full run of a Bigfoot NFT, and that's a really, really cool NFT. I'm looking into the legalities right now. I have 10 of them, 10 of the same edition of the same picture. So I'm looking at how I could give them away as prizes throughout the year. So just waiting on the legalities. I'm new to crypto. I'm new to NFTs. Just figuring it all out. But so ghost hunting. Well, we've all seen the TV shows. We've all seen, the haunted TV shows where they go around and they go and hunt for ghosts, going all the way back to the original Ghost Hunters TV series, where, there's all those memes out there. It's rapid breathing increases. It's pretty funny looking back at some of those shows. Great shows. I grew up on them. I loved them when I was younger, and I'd still go back and watch a few of them. And that build up each week, that maybe they might find something this time. And sometimes the amount of times I've gone back and watched them, and especially when I first got into all this stuff, I'd have it on. When I moved out home, we had pay TV, and I'd watch these ghost hunters and ghost explorers and all these other ghost. There's so many Ghosts Inc. and stuff like that. So many different shows, and I'd watch a few of them and go back and try to see if I could see anything, and yeah, it was pretty funny. But then I also got into all the going on tours and things like that, mostly for the fun of it. At that point, I'd sort of become a fairly skeptical person around ghosts, but I got right into at least the tours and going on tours, and I even ran a tour, well, assisted running a tour in my local area, so which was really interesting. A lot of the stuff, with these tours, you got to imagine there is a lot of dramatization. There's a lot of acting and things like that. So you've got to take it with a grain of salt. I know there are a few times there when I was working in them. Of course, you'd have a quiet night where nothing really was happening. So you might do a few of those. What's that? Did you see that? Where's that person gone? Yeah, you'd really ham it up a bit, and it'd get people spooked, especially when you're bringing people to an area that they've never been to before. Look, that's tours in general. If you're doing real ghost research, and that's where you're getting access to these places without the ghost tour, or with just the heads of the tour, and you're cutting away all the BS. So cutting away the production value. All you want to do is just stay a night in a haunted place. That's when things get a bit more real. That's when, honestly, I think it's scarier whenever I've been to places like that, because when you're doing that sort of thing, it is scary. Regardless of whether you see a ghost or hear anything or not, it can be very terrifying to stay in a place in the dark all night. You don't know what's in there. It's a new area. You've never been there before. And you've got to be fairly trusting as well, because you're telling people that you're going to this house to go ghost hunting or do ghost research, and you don't know who's going to follow you. You don't know if the people who own the place are going to set things up. This goes all the way back to the early 1900s, where we had people who used to try to scam things and used to try to make these things up. So you'd have the tables that would have pedals attached to them underneath, where people could tap on the pedal. It'd be like they're tapping on a floorboard that was attached to the table somehow, and that might make a knocking sound under the table. So that's where table knocking became popular. And then you might have had a big table with magnets built into it, where you could use that for things like Ouija boards and spirit boards and things of that nature. So a few easier ones as well could have just been someone hiding in a fake wall with a bit of string hooked up to the curtains, and they'll just give it a little tug, a little bit of fishing wire, and it'd make it look like the curtains are moving. They had all sorts of weird and wacky ways of trying to scam people. But what if some of this stuff was real? That's what I'm really interested in. Is we know all the scammers. We know where a lot of the scamming came from. Harry Houdini was actually one of the main people for going around and wanting to get rid of scammers. These people who are faking these haunted houses. But he genuinely believed there may have been something else. He was skeptical, but he was open to believing, which is more than I can say for some of our skeptic folk out there nowadays who, look, I haven't seen much, to be honest. And things I have seen, maybe it can be something else. Maybe I misconstrued something, but at least I'm open. Like I'm willing to, hedge my bets and say, look, it may have been this, it may have been that. I think it's really dangerous to go straight heavy on one side or the other. If you are just going straight onto, it's one of those times where being a centrist is actually a good idea. So you want to be able to think about things in a critical way, but also have your mind open to things. I've met people who, honestly, a ghost could walk up to them, shake their hand, and oh, if they could, and disappear, and the person would just say, "Yeah, that was a hologram set up by that camera that's hidden in that tree over there," or there was a drone that was projecting something from a light underneath it. They come up with all sorts of things, and likewise, then you've got the other people who are the true believers who will not think critically, and they will sit there and say, I know that door slammed because it was a ghost. Even though you look down the hallway and the hallway's got a door open and there's wind blowing through. Nope, it has to be a ghost. And look, we have that with every weird thing. From ghosts to cryptids to ufology, we always have the true believers, the full-blown cynics and critics, and then we have the people in the middle who are just trying to find some answers. So we really want to sit in that middle area. That's the best area to sit. So if you're on either side of that fence, come over to the middle a bit and shake hands. All right. So ghost hunting. It's the process of investigating locations that are reported to be haunted by ghosts. Typically, a ghost hunting team will attempt to collect evidence supporting the existence of paranormal activity. Ghost hunters use a variety of electronic devices, including EMF meters, digital thermometers, both handheld and static digital video cameras, including thermographic and night vision cameras, night vision goggles, as well as digital audio recorders. Other more traditional techniques are also used, such as conducting interviews and researching the history of allegedly haunted sites. Ghost hunters may also refer to themselves as paranormal investigators. Ghost hunting has been heavily criticised for its dismissal of the scientific method. No scientific study has ever been able to confirm the existence of ghosts. The practice is considered a pseudoscience by the vast majority of educators, academic and science writers and skeptics. Science historian Brian Regal described ghost hunting as an unorganised exercise in futility. I mean, it can be because, look, something could happen that you don't catch on camera and you will never be able to prove it. And you know what? The annoying thing is a lot of these things do happen. Now, a lot of people who have reported stories to me say this, that they swear to the blue in the face that they saw something. And you know what? I believe that they did see something. I don't know what it was, but I believe that they did see something. So when I'm dealing with someone like that, I consider, to shoot them down and just say, what are you talking about? It must have been the wind or it must have been this or that. It's not the way to deal with it because we shut ourselves off. So yes, it might be an exercise in futility, but so were a lot of other things before we started researching them. The idea of traveling across the planet to see if the world is actually a globe or not was an exercise in futility. Considering that could you grow certain foods in certain climates was an exercise in futility until we actually did it. So, yeah, it's going to take a fair bit. And the hard thing with this paranormal research is that you're never going to be able to provide something conclusive. But if it helps you through your day, that's the main thing. It's all about what's your own beliefs. Anyway, we're rambling a bit with that. But we had a few people who were fairly notable paranormal investigators. So we had Harry Price. So Harry Price was born 17th of January 1881, and he passed away 29th of March 1948. He was a British parapsychologist, psychic researcher, and author who gained public prominence for his investigations into psychical phenomena and his exposing of fraudulent spiritualist mediums. He is best known for his well-publicised investigation of the purportedly haunted Borley Rectory in Essex, England. Price's exploits were given wide exposure in a 1950 book, Harry Price, Biography of a Ghost Hunter, by Paul Tabori. He was also a long-standing member of the Ghost Club based in London, one of the very first ghost researching clubs. So Price joined the Society of Psychical Research, SPR, in 1920 and used his knowledge to stage magic to debunk fraudulent mediums. So essentially he would go along and he would he would be hoaxing the hoaxers, saying that something, my father was he had red hair and he had liver problems, and then the medium would come out and say, yes, I see a very tall man with red hair. He has a slightly Irish accent, and he's holding his stomach like he's in pain. And this is called cold talking, and something that you need to be very aware of. We see this in a lot of TV shows where they cold talk. You got to be careful with mediums. There's more fake mediums out there than there isn't, which is sad because I know a few people who are pretty good. I think they genuinely do have some sort of a gift, but no one will get on board with them because what they tell you is never 100%, but it is very, very close. Whereas these other ones will try to give you things that are 100% sure, but they'll do that by using cold talking. So they'll say something like, "Oh, I know. I feel that when your grandfather passed away." So they'll look at your age and they'll go, "Okay, you're a 55-year-old person. Okay, so your parents are more than likely either passed on or about to pass on." So then they go, "Well, I can feel that there's energy around the person that there's going to be money problems. There's money problems, or there will be money problems around the family. There's an elderly person, maybe a grandparent or a senior person in your family who has passed on, and there was a lot of money problems." Well, look, let's face it. When most of us pass on, there's going to be money problems. There always is, regardless of whether money problems mean that there is no money, or whether it's that we can't divvy out the money equally, or maybe it's that there's too much money and it hasn't been sent to the right person. There's always going to be some sort of a money problem. So these cold talking things, Harry Price used to go around and debunk them. So in 1922, he exposed the spirit photographer William Hope. In the same year, he travelled to Germany together with Erich Dingwall and investigator Will Schneider at the home of Barton Albert von Schrenk-Notzing in Munich. In 1923, Price exposed medium Jan Guzik. According to the Price, the man was clever, especially with his feet, which were almost as useful to him as his hands in producing phenomena. Price wrote that the photographs depicting the ectoplasm of medium Eva Carrera, taken with Schrenk-Notzing, looked artificial and two-dimensional, made from cardboard and newspaper portraits, and that there were no scientific controls as both her hands were free. In 1920, Carrera was investigated by psychical researchers in London. An analysis of her ectoplasm revealed it to be made of chewed paper. So that's what I mean. They'll go to any length they can to try and bullshit people. It's really frustrating. It ruins a lot of the research that we're trying to do. But people like Harry Price, I guess people like myself nowadays are out there trying to get the real stories out there and pull apart the ones that are bullshitting. Because if you're in this just to make a quick dollar out of it, it's the wrong game. Go find something else to do. I've been there. I've done the BS. I've been the one who's been doing the acting out and stuff at a ghost thing. I was very young at the time, so don't hold that against me. But I needed a job, but so I know what it's like. So then you had people like Ed and Lorraine Warren, very, very controversial couple. A lot of you would know them from the movies that they've been in recently that are based around their lives that have come out recently. There's been a whole string of movies about them, about Annabelle the doll and all that. So yeah, they are fairly well known, especially now, and their museum still exists. Where are we? Edward. So Ed Warren was born September 17th, 1926, and he died August 23rd, 2006. Meanwhile, Lorraine was born in January 31st, 1927, and Lorraine only died in April on the 18th in 2019, so only a few years ago. So Lorraine was very, very well liked by a lot of people, but also absolutely hated by some. Lorraine had really gone down the deep end of everything is demons and everything is haunted. And she had started to ruffle some feathers. And so had Ed. Ed, back in his day, later years, had definitely ruffled feathers. There were people that really weren't happy with how he did his research and with Lorraine as well. But there's people that absolutely loved them. There's people out there who thought they were, the second coming of Jesus almost. So they were American paranormal investigators and authors associated with prominent reports of hauntings from the 50s to the present day. Edward was a World War II United States Navy veteran and former police officer who became a self-taught and self-professed demonologist, author and lecturer. Lorraine professes to be a clairvoyant and a light trance medium who worked closely with her husband. In 1952, the Warrens founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, the oldest ghost hunting group in New England. They authored numerous books about the paranormal and about the private investigations they had done. So a lot of their investigations they did, they wrote books and they made money out of it, which is nothing wrong with that. Make money. We all of us podcasters, that's what we try to do. So there's nothing wrong with making money out of this stuff. Just don't bullshit anyone. They claim to have investigated over 10,000 cases during their career and have been involved with various supernatural claims such as the Snedeker family haunting, the Enfield poltergeist, and the Smurl haunting, as well as claims of demonic possessions of the trial of Arne Chain Johnson. So I'm going to go into all these this year. I really want to do a bit more in the ghost stuff. I know my wife wants me to because that's really her jam. She loves all the ghost stuff. More than, say, aliens and cryptids. So, yeah, I really want to touch more on this, and I really have sort of shied away from it because the hardest thing with the ghost stories is once you've told one ghost story, you've pretty much told them all. It's very hard to find ghost stories that haven't been retold verbatim over and over and over. So, yeah, but I'm going to do some research. Even if they're only short shows, they might only be like half-an-hour episodes or something, but we're going to cover some more ghost stuff. Maybe even do a field research trip this year. Now that things are coming out of lockdown, touch wood. I mean, I know we've got Omicron to deal with, but it seems like things are going to be going a lot better, smoother this year with any luck. So hopefully I can get into some place to do some research. So the Warrens, of course, are best known for the 1976 Amityville horror case in which New York couple George and Kathy Lutz claimed that their house was haunted by a violent demonic presence so intense that it eventually drove them out of their home. The Amityville horror conspiracy authors Stephen and Roxanne Kaplan characterized the case as a hoax. Lorraine Warren told a reporter for the Express Times newspaper that the Amityville horror was not a hoax. The reported haunting was the basis for the 1977 book The Amityville Horror, which was adapted into the 1979 and 2005 movies of the same name, while also serving as inspiration for the film series that followed. The Warrens' version of events is partially adapted and portrayed in the opening sequence of The Conjuring 2. According to Benjamin Radford, the story was refuted by eyewitnesses, investigations, and forensic evidence. In 1979, lawyer William Weber reportedly stated that he, Jay Anson, and the occupants invented the horror story over many bowls of wine. And look, that could be the case. I have been with friends where we've had a few too many drinks, and the spirit board comes out, and I guarantee you, if we were sober, I'd be able to tell you who was pushing the plectrum. I'll be able to tell you exactly what was going on. But because we were all fairly tipsy, it just seemed like a crazy thing. Yeah, so this could be a real thing. People get together and they do know how to make up these things. So they're two of the, well, three rather, of the really well known ones. So how about the stats? Well, according to a survey conducted in October 2008 by the Associated Press and Ipsos, 34% of Americans say they believe in the existence of ghosts. Moreover, a Gallup poll conducted on June 6th to 8th, 2005 showed that only 32% believe that ghosts exist, with belief declining with age. Having surveyed 3 countries, United States, Canada, and Great Britain, the poll also mentioned that more people believe in haunted houses than any other paranormal items tested, with 37% of Americans, 28% of Canadians, and 40% of Brits believing. In 2002, the National Science Foundation identified haunted houses, ghosts, and communication with the dead among pseudoscientific beliefs. So so there's your beginning. There's how it all starts. But how about we start talking about the equipment? Let's talk about setting up a proper. Let's talk about setting up. So I want this episode to be really a guide, especially to you new researchers, for people who are wanting to go along to a tour, or for people who are just who have been in the game but want to sort of rekindle it and get excited about getting back into it. So there's a few things we need to do before we even step foot into the house or the location where the haunting is supposedly happening. Two major things: contact the right people. And please make sure you do this. So if it's in public land, contact the council, contact the local area, and let them know that you're going to be walking around on that public land at night with lights and stuff, because it's very quick that you'll end up getting police called on you. If you're going to be entering a building, make sure you have permission. And not just permission, written permission. And when you enter that building, make sure you carry that written permission with you. It's a very common thing that when people know that a group are doing a paranormal investigation, that people who are skeptical or people who just like to pull pranks will call the police on them. And when they show up and you don't have a permit to be there, or you don't have any proof that you're allowed to be in that building, they'll kick you out very quickly. And if they want to get really nasty, they can get you for trespassing. So definitely check with your local laws, check that you've got the right permissions, and go along with that. Be careful with things like a lot of people like doing paranormal research trips into graveyards and things like that. Be really careful about this. Make sure that there's what your local laws are before you do this, because some cemeteries do not allow this at all. No after hours walking around torches and stuff. So be very, very careful. I don't want anyone getting busted and given a fine or anything just because they want to try to do some ghost hunting. Look, ideally, if you want to start somewhere, start with tours. So start with tours that run. As I said, they are very much full of drama and dramatization of things, but at least you'll get an idea of what you're looking at. And look, hang to the back. Don't follow the group too closely. Don't wander off either, though. Stay with the group, but sort of just do your own thing. Take photos. If you've got a backpack, get a key ring. We'll go into some of the tech, some of the tech that we're going to use soon. But get a key ring so your voice recorder can hang off the back of your backpack. Some people put a GoPro on their back, like on the back of their head or on the back of their backpack, so it can record what's behind them. This can be really, really interesting. So you can do your own investigation while the tour is going on. Just be aware that some things may be set up. I know there's the quarantine centre in Sydney, a great place to go, but one of the fellas there does rattle some chains and kick a steel bucket when they're telling one of the stories. And to me, that really takes away from what a lot of people are there for, but also it gives other people what they are there for. Some people are there to get scared. They want to go to like a haunted house as if it's a tourist attraction type ride or something. So everyone's getting what they want, I guess, but for investigators, it can be a bit rough. So once you've established where you're going to go, how you're going to do it, and if you have permission that you're going to do it, make sure you got a team together. Better off not doing this by yourself. At least you and one other person. The reason I say this is not because, I'm worried that you're going to get possessed or anything, which, if you believe in that, then maybe that's a genuine problem. But the real reason is just danger. A lot of these old places have got trip hazards, have got bad floorboards, especially two-story buildings and stuff. It's really important to have someone else there with you just in case something happens. And make sure that you both have phones fully charged, that you're not using for taking photos and stuff. At least one of your phones is fully charged. You're not using it for photos, video, or torches, so that you can use it as an emergency phone if required. A lot of people, what they do is that they'll have one phone that's set to airplane mode, and they'll turn off all the tech on it so they don't get any interference from incoming calls or anything. And then that's the safety phone. And a certain person carries it, or everyone sets their phone to that, and you use other equipment for the research. We'll get into that with the equipment soon. So once you've done all that, create a plan. What do you want to research? Don't go in there and you've got to approach this in a scientific way, as scientific as you can get. You also want to have fun with it. So go in there with a plan. So what are you going to do? All right. So we're going to set up 5 voice recorders. All right. Where are we going to set them up? We're going to set them up on the first floor, the second floor, and 2 on the third floor, and the 5th one we're going to have hanging off the back of a backpack. Cool. All right. Second, how many cameras do we need? Do we need each person to carry a camera, or do we just want one independent cameraman? It's a good idea to have more than one camera. How many cameras are we going to have set up that are stationary cameras that just sit there and record? Are we going to do atmospheric testing while we're there? So do we need thermometers? Do we need wind gauges? Things like that. Another thing, really important thing to ask is, how much tech do we actually have? Look, the tech you have is the best. Whatever you have on you right now, whatever you have around your house, whether it be torches, a little thermometer that you might dip in your soup or something like that, anything like this can be used. A children's toy can be used as a way of communication between spirits. If you ask them to make things go beep or ding, a really effective thing can be a kid's little xylophone. Just a little metal xylophone that you could pick up at any toy shop or any discount store and set that up. And if it starts playing sounds, have an EVP, have a voice recorder sitting right next to it, and put it in a room where you're not going to be. All right. So once you've set up your plan, you've got your team, and you've got your location, now we need to start thinking about the equipment. All right. So this is where it gets really, really interesting. So let's go with some of the essential equipment. So light. Light is your primary piece of equipment that you need. And that's if you're doing daytime research, nighttime research rather, and even daytime research, because sometimes you will be going into places during the day that might get very dark. So let's say you're going into mines or caves. You might want to have really good light for that. You might end up staying out researching so long that you end up needing to have a torch. You might not realize, geez, that day went fast. It does happen. And you can research during the day and the night. That's another thing you'll have to have in your plan, is do you want to research it during the day or during the night? Look, people always say, oh, they come out at night, there's haunting hours and things like that. That's partially true. There's truth behind that. A lot of mediums will tell you. But ideally, you can catch some pretty interesting stuff. The only thing I'd say, though, is when taking photos and things like that, the way light is, it's going to be harder to see things in an image. And that goes for a lot of research. So just be careful with that. And there's a lot of things like blur from the sun and stuff like that can happen during the day that can really throw off your camera skills. The other thing you want to think about when you're going in at night is, are you going to be staying overnight? If so, do I need sleeping equipment, stuff like that? So do I have light is a good one. So do I have a headlamp? Headlamps are really handy to have. A headlamp can be used obviously on your head, primarily used on your head. But look, you can go and get, you can buy headlamps now for $5 a headlamp at a discount store or a camping store. Sometimes headlamps can be more useful than a handheld torch, because you can use the straps to tie them onto bags. You can use them to tie them around your chest. You don't just have to have them on your head. You might want to have a light tied to a beam somewhere. A lot of people will set up lights around what we call a safe zone. So your safe zone might be where you have your computers set up, where your beds are set up. It's where you return to once you finish doing, say, a run of research. There's a really big thing where people want to just keep on going through, walk around nonstop, just continuously research, continuously. You want to have a safe spot to come back to where you have everything set up, food, water, all that sort of stuff set up, medical aid if you need it, all of that, where you can return back to that's very well lit, where you can actually sit down and have a look at stuff. Especially if you have equipment failures, damage to equipment, you want to come back to something that's safe, or as safe as it can be anyway. So having a good safe spot with lots of lighting can be important. Look, you don't need to have a blazing camera, but something with 1,000 lumens is going to be like a spotlight when you've been out there for so long. So be aware when you are using those lights. If you've turned your light off for a while and you're getting a bit of using your own night vision, you're sort of building up that night awareness. Just be aware that as soon as you turn that light on, you can be blind. It's the whole when someone flicks on the light when you've been asleep for too long. Yeah, just be aware of that. So make sure you got light. If you're not going in with anything else, let's say you're going low tech. Some people do like to go in low tech. Phone's turned on airplane mode, no cameras, no recorders, nothing. They just want to have an experience. They don't care if they can report it. They don't care if they can prove it. They're there to try and have an experience for themselves. It's a really cool way of doing things. A lot of people do this with cryptids as well. So no one's going to believe you. I'll tell you that now. If you don't have video proof or recording or anything, or even then, even if you have them, people won't believe you. But if you go in there honestly and you explain to people honestly that that's what you felt, look, people can tell whether you're actually BSing or not. So if you ever have a story that you want to share on the show, definitely send it to that email address, the Oddball Aussie podcast. The Oddball Aussie at hotmail.com. It doesn't have podcast written in it. It's a good way to sharing your story. I'm always open and no judgment here. But it can be very interesting. But if you go in with nothing, do wait for people to be skeptical. So always have backup batteries for all of your equipment is the next thing. So if you are using torches, make sure you got enough batteries for all the torches. If you're using any other equipment, make sure you know what sort of batteries they need and that you've got batteries for everything. And I mean, backups are backups. People who do ghost research will know that there seems to be a thing where energy gets sapped from electronics. So you need to have backups. And some people even now have their backup batteries kept in things like Faraday bags and stuff like that to protect them from being zapped. Whether this is a environmental phenomenon or whether it's a paranormal one, you never know. But it's better to be safe than sorry. Next, cameras. So cameras, you want to say I don't want anyone going out there and buying $1,000 camera. Ideally, you want to have an independent camera, a camera that's not your phone, that's not something else. It's just a camera. It's just for setting up. You might buy, say, 2 or 3 cheap video cameras. The best equipment you have, as I said, is the equipment that you already own. So, failing all that, okay, let's go with your phone. Let's use your phone. You've got a camera on your phone. You've got a light on your phone. You've got all these things. Just be aware that all these things are going to drain your phone battery very, very quickly. And if that's your only connection to the outside world, you want to be very careful. So if you want to spend a bit of money, then go with something like an SLR, a DSLR camera. Get yourself a really good digital SLR camera. Then buy some fixed surveillance. So get something like your Nest cams and or your Ring cams and things like that we'd normally use for around our houses and place them around areas. There's some really good battery operated ones now that are Bluetooth. So they connect to each other. They don't last as long, but they can be really handy. If you're doing a daytime research, some of these are powered by solar. So if you want to have a camera watching a door or watching the external of the building all day, you could have these set up looking at the building in different angles and running off solar. So that can be really handy as well. And think about what you can use when you're using your equipment. Like, how many things do you want to hold in your hands? So a GoPro is perfect. GoPro, you can have it on your chest, have it on your head. As I said before, have one on the back of your head. Face it rearward. It all depends on how much money you want to spend. You can now pick up some pretty cheap knockoff GoPros for about $20. They're not great. They're not 4K or anything like that, like the latest GoPro, but they aren't bad. They're pretty good. Then if you want to go up from there, you could always look at drones as well. There's some really interesting DJI drones if you want to spend some money. I wouldn't recommend cheap drones only because they're so hard to fly. They don't tend to be reliable, and the last thing you want to be doing is practicing your flying skills while you're trying to do a research trip. So the other thing you want to think about when it comes to drones is land drones. So remote control cars with cameras strapped on. Get a GoPro, get a cheapo. I'd always say get a cheapo GoPro for this. Strap to the top of a remote control car, and you can get into those areas that you might not be able to get into yourself. Really interesting way of doing it. I've seen people be using these recently. It's really cool. Get a small remote control car. Make sure it has controls that go that are global controls, so they go left and right, forward and back. None of this bloody, looks like a gun, and you got to turn it on the side. Have really good controls, and you can buy them cheap as well. Just once again, make sure you've got enough battery power and everything for them. The next thing you want to look at is things that deal with temperature. So ideally, a laser pointer thermometer. These laser pointer thermometers, we've been seeing them a lot lately with COVID tests. You can point them at someone's forehead and it'll give you a really good test. But the ones we're actually after aren't the forehead ones. The ones we're after are the ones that mechanics and tradesmen use for telling the temperature of things. A lot of plumbers might use these for pipes. Builders might use these for things like pipes as well, or the temperature of a roof before they climb up on top of it. These you can buy these fairly cheap at your local hardware store, and you want to get something that's fairly reliable. You don't really want to go to a knockoff store for something like this. And look, they're good to have because even after your research trip is done, they're actually pretty handy. I've used them plenty of times to check things like the temperature of the shed and things like that to see if, well for me, where it's when I've got my beer in the shed, do I need to ventilate? Do I need to cool down the shed? They can be really handy for lots of different things. The next thing I want to think about as well is a sound recording device. So what we are trying to capture is EVP. This stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon. Now, what is this? This is exactly what it sounds like. It's a voice being recorded on a recording. So if something is speaking into the microphone, or if something can pass on a voice that you can't normally hear, maybe it can be picked up by the voice recorders. I'm constantly hoping that one day through my radio, through my podcast, that one of you might message me and say, Oz, we've got this. We heard this on your show. Someone was speaking through your podcast. That'd be really great. So if there's anyone around, definitely jump on and have a chat. So the thing we want to look at, though, is easy portable sound recorders. So once again, the equipment you have is the best equipment. So if you've got a recorder on your phone, which you can download plenty of them, use the recorder that's on your phone if you have nothing else. Failing that, an old phone. If you've got an old phone sitting around, that's another point. And if you've got old phones sitting around, use them. These can be your best ghost research stuff because you don't care if they break. You don't need cell service and you don't need internet service. All they are to do is to capture data, especially if you've got an older phone that still has over, say, 6 megapixels of camera, and especially ones that have upgradable memory cards in them. So old Samsungs and things like that, say Samsungs from 2000, and even from, say, 10 years ago, or even Samsungs from about 15 years ago, can be really, really useful. Their cameras tend to be really good, but there's Motorola's out there that are good as well. The iPhones tend to be, because they never had the upgradable data in them, and not only that, iPhones tend to degrade really badly after so many years. But if you've got an iPhone and it's working, use that as an option as well. When it comes to electronic voice recorders, you can also get these built into handheld radios. It can be a function on a handheld radio. And you can buy them as a little... so I've got one sitting right next to me right here. I use it for field stuff. So the one I've got is an Olympus VN541PC. Really cool little piece of tech. It's got you just point it in the direction you want to pick up, and it's also got a place for a lanyard. You can stop, record, save files on it. Look, if you're of the younger generation and you're used to touch screens, a lot of these voice recorders aren't going to be for you because they are buttons. They are all mostly analog, and there isn't a pretty screen on them. So you might have to put up with that. The other thing about these is that they have connections. So the one on mine, this Olympus, you've got a connection where you can hook up a headset to it, and you can listen through it as an amplified as a microphone as well. You can also put in a microphone, an external microphone, plug that into there, 2.5 millimeter jack, put that in the end there, and you can go around, you can record using that. So you could plug in, ideally, a little microphone that's maybe on your iPhone headsets into that, and you can use the microphone on the iPhone headset. I've done that before in a pinch when my other microphone, my other lavalier mic, so little chest mic, when it died, I was able to plug that in and it worked. So really a cool thing about that is you could be having that hanging off your back, and you could just be listening to it. You could have it in your pocket. Though in your pocket, it's not really, well, you could have the device actually in your pocket, and you could have the microphone, say, hooked up to the back of your shirt or to the side of your shirt, somewhere where there's not going to be too much movement. That's a big thing you need to worry about with EVPs and voice recorders. Is you don't want to put them anywhere where there's going to be too much sound movement. I recommend putting one on the back of your bag or hanging it off, say, the back of your hat or something, if it's not going to move too much. But also if it's a third or fourth EVP recorder. If you've only got one EVP recorder, if you've only got one voice recorder, don't have your only one hanging off your backpack, because you're never going to get good results. What you're after with that is, if you're going to hang it off your backpack or off your wherever, what you're going for that is very, very clear, direct voice. So not little grumbles, not little whispers. You're after something to speak very clearly, as if it was standing right next to you. So another really important thing is when you're using these, when we're speaking about voices, is that you start by speaking into it, saying the date, the time, and where you're placing it down at. So in your initial plan, you might have location A, B, C, D, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, whatever you want to call them, and you'll say that into the microphone. So the date is 11th of the 1st, 2022, and I'm placing this down in Sector 1, and then leave it. The other thing you can do as well is, if you're walking around as a team, you're not separating up. If it's only two of you, both of you speak into it. This is my voice. And then your friend says, this is my voice. So that way you now have a clear identifier of what each person's voice sounds like. So that when you hear it in the background, when you're going back through it at the end, a couple of days later or a day later, when you're doing all the breaking down, you're listening to this stuff on the computer, you can actually identify, okay, that's what I sound like on microphone. That's what my friend sounds like on microphone. Because you might sound very different to what you think you sound like. Trust me, it's something all of us podcasters have to deal with. You start talking in the microphone and you go, oh, God, that's what I sound like. I didn't realize that. But yeah, really important that you do that right with your EVPs, because the other thing you want to be careful of is the pareidolia effect, but through sound. So pareidolia is obviously when we see faces and everything in photos and stuff, but we want to be careful of that with sound as well. So a very similar effect, and it's where someone says, do you hear that? It's saying, I love you. And it might be saying, go, 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 go. You know, you could all listen to what I just made out, and you could all probably hear something different from that. Yeah, so that's what you got to be careful of. You got to be careful of people just going, oh, that's what that is. All right, so we're actually going to make this into a two-part, I think, because there's so much more stuff, and we're already nearly hitting the hour mark. I didn't even get to play the song that I had lined up. So few other of the main things we want to worry about is safe transport and storage. So really important that we have the right cases and containers to store everything in. Padded containers are really good. Failing that, a bag just with some towels and stuff to package everything up. You don't want to be banging around all your equipment, even if it isn't expensive equipment. You don't want anything to make you go, oh, well, maybe that sound's coming from this because we actually broke the mic the other day. And keep a journal as well. Keep a hard written journal. Every time you sit down to have a break, as I said, don't do an investigation where all you do is just follow a path and then come back out and you're done. Spend some time, do like a 15-minute trek, go around, set some things up as your first part of your research trip should be going around to all the areas that you know have had sightings, or people have been pushed or touched, or they've heard things, or other researchers have told you information about those areas. And what you want to do is you want to target those areas first. Go in there, get your EVPs set up, get your cameras set up. If you're setting up, say, sound devices or light devices, which we'll get into probably in the next episode, the light devices. But if you're setting up any sort of traps to make sound or light, then you want to do that early on at the start and make that part of your very first trip out. Do this for about 15, 20 minutes. Don't waste too much time on it. But as you're going around, finish up, come back to that safe base where your computers and everything else is set up. Check all your equipment. Make sure your batteries aren't sapped. The biggest issue I see with people saying, oh, my batteries are sapped. Oh, no, all my batteries run out is, are you using ship batteries? Like, did you just pop down to the dollar store and buy a box of 100 batteries? That's probably your problem. Let's say you've got really good batteries. The other issue is people say, oh, my battery just got sapped and I was only using my phone for about a half an hour. Half an hour of constant usage of a phone with a camera, audio recording set up, and maybe a torch every so often being used on it is a lot of power to be used on your phone. For any other equipment, like torches in general, think about the time frame. People will say, oh, my battery got sapped. But then they'll look back and go, oh, shit, well, I was actually walking around for 3 hours. So, of course, your battery's going to get sapped over 3 hours. What we want to keep an eye out on is that, let's say, so always start with new batteries, by the way. Even if you put the batteries in, say, 2 or 3 days ago, just go and get new batteries. I mean, it's a cheap cost to keep your credibility when you're doing your research. Next thing you want to do is, when you set them up, that's where you want to have those time codes. So when you say, I'm setting up this recording at 11:18, and then when you go and look at the recording, it's only been going for, say, 5 minutes, and then it's stopped and it's run out of batteries, that's where things get interesting. If they're brand new batteries, and this has never happened before, you've tested the equipment prior, you've never had a battery run out in this piece of equipment, that's where things start going, oh, well, okay, I know that equipment doesn't fail at 11 minutes. I know that a good battery will last about an hour or 2 hours in that voice recorder. So why did it do that? Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. So that's your baseline equipment. Your cameras, your your thermometer, your laser thermometer, your torches, and then let's start talking about your home base. So your home base you want to have set up with your laptop. You want to have a laptop there. Some people don't like to bring a laptop because it could get damaged, and that's true. So if you have the money and if you can afford it, invest in something like a tough book or something that can be knocked around a bit. Also invest in some sort of a safe carrying device as well. So like a padded briefcase or a padded case for your computer equipment. Other people, they have their safe parts set up out in the car. So they might have it all set up in the boot of their car, and all they got to do is go outside, pop the boot of their car, and then they've got this safe thing set up. Another option for that is that you might get, say, a big gazebo, because you never know, it might rain while you're in there. You might set up a big gazebo over top of your car with a fold-out table and have lights set up all the way around it. so that if you ever get disorientated, if you get lost, especially if you're doing research in, say, something like a woods or a forest, make your safe base a glowing beacon so you can see it from anywhere you are. So if you fall down, you knock your head or something, you can see the really bright glow of your safe base and you can get yourself back there. At that safe base, have food. Have a hot water in some thermoses and stuff like that. Or if you've got a kettle, have a kettle set up. If you've got something like, have your med kit set up, have food set up, have it all ready to go for when you get back. If you're going to be doing like an all-nighter, maybe take some camping food with you. The things that you can rehydrate in water, or things that you can heat up by soaking it in hot water. Maybe you just want to bring some noodles with you and just eat noodles for the rest of the night. I've done that plenty of times. But these are things like, so what I've just gone through in the last hour is the basic of basic. This is what everyone should be doing. Before we get into so part 2 will be about all the other crazy stuff. Well, crazier stuff. On part 2 of this, we'll talk about things like kinetic cameras that set up like a skeleton type print overlaying you. We're going to talk about things like what a portal box is and what a ghost box is. We'll have a look at some things like thermal imaging cameras. What else we got? Then for those of you who aren't into the tech, we've got plenty of stuff for you as well. So we'll be talking about things like very simple tech that anyone can use. So recently I came across a ghost detecting stone, which is just a plastic looking crystal with a light inside. Very simple stuff, but gets results apparently. Other things we can look at are non-tech, so no tech at all. So we might talk about some herbs, some things like smudge kits. We'll discuss things like essences and holy water, all that type of stuff. For those people who are more of the religious side or are more into the metaphysical side of things, we will talk about also about protection kits, things that work for people as in protection. So there's so much more with this, but I just wanted to initially set us up with what to do, how to set up a paranormal research trip, and what sort of baseline equipment you should use. So I hope this has been really, really informative for you all. And between now and the next episode next week, I hope you all get out there and go and do some research. Just go and have fun with it. Go nuts with it. Go find somewhere, as I said, where you have permission, it's legal, and you can go and check it out. Look, where you choose to go, just be careful. A lot of people say don't go research in your own house. I understand that. People say you don't want to dig up a spirit. You don't want to open up something in your own place. For those who are a bit more cynical or a bit more critical and are willing to do that, then home is probably a good place to start. Do a research thing in your own home. Only thing I say is, I don't tend to like to do it in my home or friends' homes. Not so much because of the metaphysical side of it, not because of the haunting side of it, more so because of the reliance on it. So if you do it at a friend's house, those friends tend to want you to come around there all the time and start doing it. The other thing you might tend to get is that friends will start to say that they're having family members contact them and things like that, because people want contact from their dead family members. That's all we ever want, really, and that gets stuck into people's heads. They just want to get contacted by their family members. So something we need to be careful of with that is that we don't let our own personal needs or wants rather than needs, get in the way. I know a lot of people say as soon as they see a Ouija board move or a voice come through an EVP, it's the devil, or it's a demon, or it's my loved one. Look, it is told that there are sinister spirits out there who will change their voice, mock and imitate your family members. It's also been said that there's supernatural type creatures that will do this. We could go into the Fae folk. There's tons of resources about the Fae folk and what they do. But while we're staying on ghosts and hauntings, these things might just make things up. They might tell you what you want to hear because they haven't spoken to anyone for a long time. a lot of other people believe, more religious people believe, that it can't be your loved one because your loved one is moved on to their next place and is awaiting the day that the awakening will happen, or whatever your religious belief says. So that it's impossible that it could be your family members. Other people tend to think that it's actually communication, not from a ghost, but from another parallel universe or another dimension. Some people even go as far as to go down the alien road. You've heard me say this once, so I'll say it again. There's a lot of people who love to say everything's aliens. They're as bad as the people who want to say everything's demons. Those two people, I'd love to see a debate between the everything's aliens and the everything's demons people, because, my God, you've all seen it. I've seen it. They just run wild. You can't tell a story. I remember going on a few. So at the end here, we'll talk about a few of my experiences. I remember going to a ghost tour. And there was a lady there who, her and her husband was a researcher. She was saying that she was a psychic medium and that their son had psychic abilities. Now, their son was a little shit. He was just a little shit. I saw nothing about him that showed that he was interested in any of this stuff. And he would have, so I was about, I want to say 18 at the time, and this kid would have been about 15. Oh no, he was younger than that. He was about 12. Yeah, it was only little. He was only small, maybe 11, 12. Anyway, so I was about 5 to 7 years older than him. And this kid basically just latched onto me, and the whole time just wanted to do stupid shit like kick me in the shin and stuff like that. And his parents would turn around and say, oh, that's him channeling the energy of the nasty people who are in this area. You know, there must have been. So we're in this supposedly haunted train museum, and these people were telling me, oh yeah, he's channeling an angry person who was a passenger on one of these trains. And I'm sitting there going, no, he's a shit who's just kicking me in the shin and running away giggling, because he was doing that in the hotel before we even left. You know, so what was there an evil spirit at the hotel as well? Anyway, we went along with this research tour. I put up with this little kid. Basically, I became his babysitter while his parents did all the fun research, and I really got nothing. Anyway, we got through it, and we got to the end, and they wanted to do a different couple in the group brought along a fold-out spirit board. They wanted to do a spirit board. This married couple, they panicked, freaked out, and basically were forbidding them from doing it. Eventually, we talked them around. They were happy to do it if they did all these protection rituals first. Which, yeah, okay, go ahead, let them do it. There was no problem with that. So then we're going through with that, and suddenly their son, it's 3 o'clock in the morning at this stage, and he's tired, and he's whinging to his dad. I want to go home. I'm tired. I just want to go home. And you could see the dad's clearly getting angry. The mother's just saying, oh, wow, I've never seen you act like this before. I'm like, yeah, this is... I bet you have. I really bet you have. Anyway, so she's saying, no, I haven't seen him like this before. There's something in this room. Anyway, he hears this, and he starts screaming and saying, I just want to go home. I'm sick of this. And his mum then says that it must be demons. There's a demon in this room. She quickly packed up all of her equipment, because we're at the end of the night. We're just doing a last minute thing. And she just told her husband, I'm going without you, like it or not. And she grabbed her son by the wrist with a bag full of equipment, didn't even pack the equipment away properly, didn't turn half the equipment off. So her tail end of her research voice recorders and the cameras would have just been shuffling and sounds of what sound like inside the bag. Packed up all this shit and just left. And the husband just like ran after her, and after that, she then wrote up a big blog. They were from Sydney. Wrote up a big Sydney blog, saying that my son had an experience, and then she had put on the EVP recordings rather of what her son had said and done. And when I listened to it, they had chopped it. They had chopped it up enough using some sort of thing like Audacity or something like that. So they had chopped it up to make it sound like their son was screaming. So they took out where he said, "I just want to go home," but then, "Oh, I'm sick of this." I think they took out when he was talking like a little shit. They took that out and they just left it with the screaming, and when he started crying, saying he wanted to go home. And then they cut out when he said he was tired. They cut out when he said he was hungry. They were just, they were real shysters. They really wanted to believe that the son was a psychic. He really wanted to believe that his wife was a psychic. And they really wanted to tell everyone it was all just demons at this train station. We didn't really get anything. Our voice recording, we got a bit of shuffling at one stage, but it could have been a possum in one of these are old rundown train carriages. It could have been a possum. In the big roundhouse, we had something that sounded like someone clanging metal together, which that was probably the weirdest thing that we heard. It honestly sounded like someone with a hammer, like bashing onto metal, like as if they were fixing something or repairing something. So that was interesting, considering that none of us heard it, and it was only one recorder that picked it up, and it was a recorder that was in the roundhouse, and then the other recorders in the carriages just outside didn't pick it up. And you'd think if something was bashing on metal like that, we all would have heard it. And this wasn't a big place. We were fairly close by, so our safe base was in the trainmaster's quarters, little cabin type thing. It just had a kitchenette and a kitchenette and a lounge room, really, with a kitchen table. So we were set up in there. So you'd think we would have heard something throughout the night if there was someone banging steel together. So that was probably the strangest thing we found. Apart from that, we also had people on board who just believed every single orb was a spirit, even though it was a fairly humid night. There'd been rain that day, so there was dust everywhere. They took one photo of a memorial, and there was like dust orbs everywhere, and they were just like, "Oh, see that? It's haunted. It's a memorial. The dead train engineers are coming back." But no, it was just dust. There would have to be a lot of train engineers if that was true. Anyway, so that was one experience. I've got plenty more. We'll go into a few more in the next episode, but for now, you know how to set up a investigation. This is so much fun. I have not touched on ghost things I've done a couple episodes here and there, but I haven't actually thought about my past history with this topic for a good probably 10 years. I think the last time me and my wife did anything actually properly and wasn't just some sort of dramatic tour that we went on would have been before we were married. So yeah, it would have been about 10 years ago. So no, it's really interesting. It's sparked me up again. As I said, I just got through an hour of this without even playing a song. So we'll definitely play the song for next time. Hope you all enjoyed this. I know it was a bit of a constant rant, but it's exactly what you need to do. This is the baseline of what you need to do to set up a research plan and the base equipment that you need. The only other piece of equipment I'd say, and we'll talk a bit more about in the next one, is an EMF meter, but you need to be careful with that about what type of EMF meter you're getting. Some of them are just so weak and are designed to be held against walls to find studs and things like that and find wires, whereas some of them will actually pick up field activity. So there are a few different ones you want to look at, and we'll talk about that in the next one when we get into the more particular items. The stuff I sort of went through today is baseline stuff that anyone probably has around the house already. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll definitely be back next week to talk more ghost hunting and more ghost hunting equipment. And send me any stories that you've had, any encounters you've had with ghost spirits, any trips you've been on, even if they're not, if you've been on a research trip or if you've been on one of these ghost tours, send it to me, even if there's no haunting in it, even if it's just a funny story, a quirky story, or just something that stands out, something that happened to you on one of these things. Send it to me. I'd love to read it out on the show. I'd love to communicate about a few of these things because everyone's got those stories from when they went on a ghost tour, and it just didn't go the right way, or nothing happened, but they had a really fun time because they were with their friends. Have fun with it. It doesn't have to be all serious all the time. If I was a spirit hanging out in a house for 1,000 years, or 100,000 years, a bit much, or 100 years, I would want people to come in and cheer me up and tell jokes and stuff. I actually do that on our ghost research trips. I'll go in a room by myself and I'll tell a stupid joke, or and I'll just see if I get a reaction. So yeah, find out, think outside the box. You don't need to follow what the ghost hunters show told you to do. You can always find your own way. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Make sure you check me out on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Aussie Oddball. And also make sure you follow me on both of those, and also send me your emails at theoddballaussie@hotmail.com. And also make sure that, if you want to send your story through Twitter, that's fine as well. Send your story to me through Twitter. DMs are always open. You can always private message me whenever you want. And I hope I'm happy to be back again. Happy birthday to the podcast again. 3 years strong, and we've got a lot of plans going forward. All right. A lot of things may change over time, but some things never change. As usual, look after each other and stay safe out there in the weird. Good night.